Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation titled LINQ Cloud 2.0, Powering Smarter Automation, Seamless Coding, and Effortless Control. Today's webinar is part of the 9th annual event in the Laboratory Automation Virtual Event Series. My name is Christina Joel. I am the director here at Labroots, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Today's educational web seminar is presented by Labroots and sponsored by Automata. For more information about Automata, go to automata.tech. Now, before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that today's event is interactive, and we encourage you first to participate by communicating with other attendees using our live chat feature during the presentation. You can find the live chat located at the left of your screen. Now, if you have any trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, click on that help desk button located at the top of your screen within the navigation bar or from the lobby within the event. Now let's get started. I now present today's speakers, Luke Pendergrass, Principal Product Manager at Automata, and Russell Green, Director of Product Applications, also at Automata. Now, for complete biographies on our speakers, please visit the Presenter tab from the menu on the left of your screen. Luke and Russell, welcome. You may now begin your presentation. Thank you, Luke and Russell, for that informative presentation. So yes, it is now time for our live Q&A portion of our webinar. So to our audience, if you haven't already done so, do so now. Simply type your questions into the Ask a Question box, click Submit, and we will answer as many of your questions as we have time for. So I'd like to bring Luke back. Unfortunately, Russell was unable to join us for the live Q&A today. Luke, we have a lot of questions that have already come in, so I'm just going to dive in here. Now, I'm getting a lot of questions that are coming in regarding validation and compliance. So I'm going to combine a couple here. Considering GXP, how is the software validated considering OQ, PQ, etc., especially in context of the process data task? And is it part 11 compliant?
Yeah, those are great questions. And it comes up a lot. So one of the ways I always think about GXP and different compliance frameworks is that we offer a toolkit for creating compliant solutions with your automation and with your workflows. I personally have encountered things like GXP meaning different things to different companies. Every company might have their own standard. So we offer things like audit trails, keeping data on-prem, the different sort of record keeping options that are provided. And typically, honestly, I've never had an experience where everything works GXP just out of the box. Usually involves a really tight relationship with some of our customer success team or networking folks directly in partnership with the IT teams of the customers that we're deploying to. We also offer things like being able to, you saw me build and plan a workflow there. We can freeze versions of the scheduler and versions of drivers and ensure that those always get deployed when you run a given validated workflow. And that can actually happen in the same day you run a different workflow using different drivers and a different version of the scheduler, because that all gets packaged up and sent down to the workcell as like a single call with the artifacts that are generated there from LINQ Cloud.
Thanks, Luke. So let's talk about workflow here. Considering you have a LIMS, don't you rather want the process data task inside of the LIMS instead of inside of the workflow?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I think the way I think about data flows, so I mean, the short version is like, yes, you also want that happening in the LIMS. But frequently you need to process data on the work cell in order to get it in a format that can either be ingested by the LIMS or can become useful to steps downstream in the workflow. So that could be anything from, hey, I actually need to pull data from a LIMS and then I need to put it in a file format that some instrument I have that has a not very helpful API can look at a flat file on the work cell and then operate based on that. So like I might need to process data task on the work cell to ensure that file gets created and the instrument gets pointed at that file correctly. Vice versa, an instrument might generate a file that I need to then pick up, do some processing with, turn it into the proper API call to go to some external system, get data, return that to the work cell, and then again, process that data on the work cell to make it available to an instrument. So I think of data integration generally as a yes and, where like I have things I want to do pre-workflow, I have things I want to do post-workflow, I have things I want to do mid-workflow, and all of those things might be on the work cell, they might be on a third-party system, or they might be in a data layer or a LIMS or an ELN.
Thanks, Luke. We have a lot of questions coming in about customization. So just asking here, can the data processing tasks be customized?
Yeah, so I think that's exactly the need that we're talking about here. So they can be, and they are never not, if that makes sense, right? Like the need is typically to write a custom Python script or a Lua function that happens in line that gets executed on the work cell. Those can be written, validated, and then checked in at GitHub and then deployed directly to the LINQ Cloud instance, so they can be managed and controlled in a really secure way, which means that you can have like an automation engineer build a workflow and build data tasks, data processing tasks that then get deployed and then are available to a scientist who might want to use the drag and drop GUI, and is much more comfortable with that they'll be available to use those tasks as well.
Great. Now, what happens with the planner, excuse me, if an error is hit during a run?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about replanning and like static replanning using that Google Maps analogy, if you recall. The interesting thing about that is if I have time constraints, for example, I might not be able to replan in a way that respects those time constraints. Also, I might have other things I want to do, right? Like if I, for whatever reason, someone bumps into a robot and it drops a tip box, I might actually just want to put a new tip box in the robot and continue, and need to let the planner know that that's the case. If someone bumps into a robot and it's got a sample and I spill the sample all over the floor, I might want to continue with the other samples that are currently on the system, but not use that sample anymore, which would mean a different plan of the workflow. All of those things are in the run manager. When you're running a workflow, will provide those options to operators so they can make informed decisions. And the planner will do its best to try to respect the rules and constraints you set up for the plan on one of those replan events. Can't always do that. Just sometimes it's impossible. And it'll let you know and ask you how you want to proceed. But that kind of pattern of like multivariable layered error handling and the interaction that an operator has with the planner as you go through those error handling steps is something that's like pretty delicate and challenging to get right, and something that we're like continuing to work on now, all the time. We regularly get feedback about that, and part of the advantage of having a cloud platform is we do new releases every month or sometimes even more frequently, which customers can optionally accept. But yeah, that's like, yeah, I could talk about error handling for a while. Sorry, I'll cut myself out here. I can just go on.
Sounds like it's another webinar for us here. So Luke,
Seriously.
we're almost out of time, but I have one more question for you. So we'll wrap with this one. Can you set up notifications from the SDK?
Yeah, so we offer out of the box filterable configurable webhooks, which is a really nice way to say like, and we allow those filterable on like, hey, every time the scheduler replans, I want to ensure I get what that new plan is sent to me to an external webhook. Or, hey, every time Labware moves, just let me know. Or anytime anything happens at all, go hit this endpoint with what happened and where. From there, those endpoints can be set up to do things like send notifications to a Slack channel, or hooked up on error conditions to send notifications to PagerDuty or some other escalation notification software. That's built in and really a first-class citizen in the workflow building experience. The other thing I'll say is the final option you can do is, since we allow the configuration of REST API calls mid-workflow from the workcell, you can actually just set up your own arbitrary notifications inside a workflow wherever you want, which is kind of neat. That is something that I've personally seen people do with workflows. Just like, hey, when the liquid handler starts, there's a task that's literally just an HTTP task that fires off somewhere a information about that liquid handler beginning.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for this great Q&A. You have so much knowledge and expertise to share with our audience. Do you have any final comments for them?
No, I'm really happy to share this and talk more about this. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always happy to talk about what you're up to in your lab. Again, I'm a product manager. I'm not on the commercial side of the business, so I'm actually really interested in the insights you have to share and how that might shape our product roadmap in the future. So by all means, don't hesitate to say hey.
Excellent. And to our audience, if you have questions you want to continue for Luke, or you want to reach out and connect, this webinar is available for on-demand viewing for a year. So just come back, submit your questions through this the webinar, and he'll get those questions directly, and he'll be reaching out to you with via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. So before we go, I do want to thank Luke and Russell again for their presentation today. And Luke, thanks for joining us for this live Q&A. I also want to thank our audience for joining us today and for their interesting questions. And I would also like to thank our sponsor, Automata, for sponsoring today's webinar. Now, as this webinar finishes, we would love for you to go visit the Automata booth in the exhibit hall after this webinar, where you can find more information and resources. Again, questions that we did not have time for today, and there were quite a few, they will be answered via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. And you can also submit questions during that on-demand period. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of the event. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.